This conference will now be recorded.
Great stuff. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Harry. I am the technical software sales specialist for Toon Boom Animation. I am based in South Africa, Cape Town, and I'm very happy to be here with you guys today. Today we're going to talk about Toon Boom Storyboard Pro, which is the worldwide leader in storyboarding software. It is the standard out there. It is used by hundreds and hundreds of studios, thousands of people. We've got studios who even have hundreds of licenses just for one studio of Storyboard Pro. It is used by animation software, animation productions. It is used for live action productions. It is used for a variety of different things. Storyboarding, as you know, is something that is not specific to any type of production. Storyboarding is essentially creating a board, a visual representation of your story. So, of course, it is used for different types of production. So I'm going to be showing you Storyboard Pro 20, which is our latest iteration of the software. And it's going to be quite a high level presentation. I'm not going to go too much into the details, but I would like to show you as much as I can as to what the software is capable of doing. Of course, I didn't mention it, but Storyboard Pro is also taught at different universities, colleges, and schools around the world. Again, it doesn't have to be animation schools necessarily. It can be film schools, advertising schools, gaming schools, anything that requires a story. You know, Storyboard Pro is there to create a visual story. So without further ado, I think we are pretty much a full house. We have 18 people. So I'm going to start. It has been recorded. It is being recorded anyway, so you guys will get the recording afterwards. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. And I also am going to hide my camera just to make sure that the flow is, the internet connection is as good as possible. So you should be able to see my screen now. So I will just hide. If you guys have any questions, I would like to invite you to write them down into the chat. And if you do want to write it down in your own language or in English, that's absolutely fine, as long as somebody is out there to translate for me. But I will get back to the questions at the end. I'll try and finish this up around 50 minutes and maybe have a 10-minute Q&A at the end, if that's okay with you guys. Okay, so let's do that. Right, so Toon Boom Storyboard Pro. As I said, Storyboard Pro is a storyboarding software, but more in general, it is a pre-production software. It will allow you to start creating your world, your content, your story through images, through videos. You'll be able to create your layouts, your character rough drawings, your character rough designs or prop rough designs, create your world, starting to create your world within Storyboard Pro. And then you can go all the way to what we call an animatic, which is a video representation of your storyboard. Okay, so I'll show you some of those things as we go along. Let me open up a blank, an empty project, and I'll show you how you can start creating your storyboard in here. So essentially, Storyboard Pro is very easy to use. We've got big windows available. Everything is customizable. You can customize your workspaces to suit your style. You essentially have your drawing tools and animation tools and all kinds of tools on the side and at the top. These things can be moved around and customized. But when you're teaching storyboarding or any software for that matter, you may want to stick to specific workspaces, right? And so we have these workspaces at the top here. For example, we have the first one that we're going to look at is the drawing workspace, because this is where you're going to start creating your board, sometimes from scratch, sometimes we're importing from outside, but essentially you're going to start creating it. And so the drawing workspace gives you the big camera view in the middle, some tabs on this side, and the thumbnail view at the bottom, so that you can start telling your story. So let's start with the obvious thing. Let's start with the script, right? Because when you start a storyboard, normally you would start bringing in a script and drawing or capturing visually what the script is saying, right? So in Storyboard Pro, you have what we call the Storyboard tab, and you've got a space for scripting there. That is a space where you can actually type your script if you wanted to. You could add, you could copy and paste a script in here if you wanted to. You could really create it from scratch. Or you can actually import a script that was maybe written somewhere else. Maybe you can import it from a TXT or an RTF file. You can import it from a final draft file, which is a software which is specialized in scripting. So really it is, it's very flexible as to how you want to bring a script. But let's bring in a TXT file over here. And as you can see now, we've got our script inside the scripting window over here. And now it's up to you to start creating your storyboard according to the script. And like I said, you can modify that. You can add more of this if you wanted to. So I've got my script. My script is telling me that there are racers that are racing in a flat desert. So, I'm going to start creating that. Of course, we don't have that much time for the demo, nor am I an artist. So I'm not going to be able to draw these things for you. So I'm going to make use of one of the most powerful tools in Storyboard Pro and in Toon Boom Harmony as well, which is another software which we will present to you next week, is the library. The library is a place where you can save everything that you create within Storyboard Pro or that you bring within Storyboard Pro. You can save it as a template. This will save you in a lot of ways. It will make your work more efficient because you can create something, save it for later, reuse it. If you don't want to redo something over and over again. And you can also share. You can use it to share amongst people. For teaching purposes or learning purposes, it can be a repository for lessons or exercises where the teachers have maybe prepared some exercises for you, saved it into the library, and then people just bring it in. And that's exactly what I'm going to do for the demo. So for example, I'm going to bring an environment, a background that has been prepared, that I've prepared for myself in here. So I can just drag and drop it inside of Storyboard Pro, and here it is. And as you can see, it's a big background, big environment that I have access to, and that's my flat desert. I'm going to bring more. I'm going to bring a rough rock as well, so that I can also start drawing the cleanup for this rock, for example. So as you can see, these are layers, because Storyboard Pro allows you to work in layers. You can create vector layers, you can create bitmap layers, you can move them around, you can rename them. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do with layers, right? So I'm going to create a new vector layer, for example, on top of this one, and I could call it rock cleanup, for example. I could leave it as it is, and then I can go and closer to this rock here and maybe create my clean version of the rock, because somebody else has very kindly made a rough for me, so I can now start cleaning this up. Okay, this will allow me to demonstrate some of the drawing tools that we've got inside of Storyboard Pro. I have used the light table to make it a bit more transparent. And so I can go through some of the drawing tools here. We've got a brush tool, for example, which allows me to draw with a brush like this. We've got the brush tool allows me to modify the, this is a vector. This is a vector line, so I can select it like this. I can modify the contour of that line, as you probably are aware with vectors, so you can change the points like this, to make it very artistic or as creative as you'd like. I'm sure you guys are familiar with vector tools. I can add more points, delete points, or I can also use what we call the pencil line. And the pencil line is a line that doesn't have information for the outside, but it's got a center line information. So if I select the line, I can change the direction of that line like this. Okay, so it's not so much the outside, but the direction of the line. Okay, so that's the two types of vector lines that I've got. What's really cool about the pencil line is I can actually change its thickness after I've drawn it. So for example, if I select this one and it's too thick, I can bring the line thinner like that after I've drawn it. And I can even do that with several lines. Let me do it through another tool. We've got what we call the line tool over here. Now the line tool is really great because it allows me to draw a straight line like this, but also then it will allow me to create a curve if I want to. So either I have a straight line like that, which is the option here, or I create a curve by dragging, releasing, and creating my curve. Or I create an S curve by dragging, releasing, creating a curve, and creating another curve like that. And that is also a pencil line. So if I want to make that also thinner, I can select both of these lines and make them thinner as well. That's not all I can change with these lines. I can also, believe it or not, put textures with these lines. Even though it's a vector line, I can actually put a texture after the fact. After I've drawn it, I can put a texture in that line. Now, this is, really great because I can give my drawings a lot of style, but it remains vector, right? So if I select this line now, I can still modify its trajectory because it's a pencil line, a pencil vector line. And yes, I can do the same with brushes. If I go into the brush properties, I can go into this and change it from a solid vector to a textured vector. And that will also allow me to select any kind of texture I've got over here. For example, these blotches. I can change a whole bunch of settings here, from randomness to hardness to even the pen tilt sensitivity or the use of the pen rotation if you've got the hardware to work with it. You can also have two textures combined. You can even have a paper texture at the back. So there's a lot of things that you can do. And if you wanted to draw with this now, you can see it's got, that lovely texture to it when I draw with that. So from close, obviously it's pixelated because it is a bitmap. Essentially, it's a bitmap texture, right? So let's choose another one here, which is really different. You see there a lovely texture like that, but this is still a vector line. You see, I can still modify it with vector points. So as you can see, it's really, really flexible. There's a lot that we can do in terms of drawing. Obviously, I didn't speak about the colors, but you can make these a specific color. So for example, if I were to pick a blue like this, go back to my brush, I picked the blue. So now my texture is going to be blue. I can do some shading on top. So the more I go over something, the darker it gets. So really there's a lot of creativity that you can use. There's a lot of tools that you can use for your content there. Okay. So moving on to another section of this demonstration, let me just go back to black because I'm probably going to use that a little bit later, and go back to solid vector as well. There you go. Great. Moving on to another section of this demonstration, you know, a lot of people also like to use bitmap images. Bitmap images are what you essentially, we all see bitmap images everywhere. We see them on television, we see them on screens. You know, it's got pixels instead of those vector lines, and generally it's seen to be very beautiful and very smooth, very textured. Now in Storyboard Pro, you can bring in bitmap layers. For example, this is a bitmap layer. If I take this out, you can see there's my bitmap foreground, and I can very easily also paint directly on that vector foreground and add some textures to it. Okay, so again, I can pick up one of these. In fact, I can pick up a preset here because I can save myself some presets, okay, if I wanted to. So here is, for example, one like that, and as you can see, you know, I'm very soft, it's very soft, and the harder I get, the harder it is as well. So I can really go and play around with that directly onto my bitmap layer. And I can add as many bitmap layers as I want to. In fact, I can even import a bitmap layer directly inside, I mean, a bitmap image directly inside of my scene or my project. To do that, I can go to File, Import, and maybe, for example, bring it as layers, because most of the time, a lot of people still or create their backgrounds or their layouts inside of Adobe Photoshop, for example, with multiple layers. Or they create them, they start creating them inside of Storyboard Pro, then they export them as layers, bitmap layers, they finish them up in Photoshop, and they bring them back here. That's also something that is done quite a lot, and it's absolutely possible to do so here. So here I could go import images as layers, and I could go and find that background around here and bring in that PSD file, which, as you may know, is the file format for Adobe Photoshop, right? And then bring it all directly in here. So if I say open, it will say this image contains multiple layers. Do you want me to keep them? Yes. And so now it's going to add all of these layers in here, just like you had them in Photoshop. And that can be really, really useful, so that you now can start keep creating your board with all of those different layers. So instead of bringing it into this one, let's look at our script a little bit. And our script is saying that we are now going into, you know, the plunging into a forest, driving in thick trees, you know, so we actually need to create a new scene here. Okay, this is the one scene, and then the next scene will be them going into that forest. So let's create another scene. To do that, it's very simple. We've got these buttons at the top here, and we can say new scene, and it creates for me a new thumbnail. If I want more panels into one scene, I can just add more panels. So 1, 2, that's it. And so now I've got scene 1 with 1 panel, and then we got scene 2 with 3 panels. Okay, so that's how easy it is for you to start creating your board and your thumbnails like that. So now I can bring in my background, or I can start drawing my background. I've created them already here as a template, and I can just bring them in here directly like that. And that will allow me now to start maybe creating something on top of this. If I want to maybe duplicate this background and make sure that not only I duplicate it, but also every time I make changes to it, I can actually change it throughout all the panels that I've duplicated in. I can do that. That would be absolutely great. So for example, let's say I want to separate the road from the rest of my canopy. So maybe I'm not going to change my canopy, so I'm going to actually merge all of this. I can do that. It's very easy for me to merge layers like this, and it's going to say, what are you going to call it? Let's leave it as merge layer for now. That's it. And then my road is separated, okay? So that's fine. My road is separate from the others. And now what I'm going to do is we've got a folder here called shared. I'm going to share these. I'm going to share the merged one. I'm going to say share drawing, and I'm going to share the road as well. And you'll see why this is very useful, because now what I can do for my next panels, or however many panels I want, I can actually put in my shared ones in there like this. Okay, now I've got my merged one here, and then I've got my road, which I can also bring them into the other panels. And now you'll see that if I go here, in fact, my road is at the back, so I can just move it on top like this. And here as well, I can move it on top. Now, what's great about this is that if I want to make changes, so as you can see, I've got the same background on all three panels. But let's say I want to make changes to the road. Anywhere I am, it can be panel 3, panel 4. I want to make a change, and I'm not going to do something crazy. I'm just going to do, let's say, a cross here. You'll see that it will actually update it on all of the ones that I have shared it with. You see, so there's a cross in this one, the cross in this one, and the cross in that one. So the shared file allows me to not replicate every time something like a background, but also I can modify it as well, and it will change it on all of the panels at the same time. And that's a very powerful thing to be able to do. Okay, so let's start bringing in some more here. I'm going to bring in the racers into one of these panels, and let me actually delete that cross. Okay, that's it. I'm going to bring in my racers like this, and I'm going to show you one more drawing tool quickly before we move on to the animatic portion of the demo. This is something that's done quite a lot. As you can see, we've got several layers here. We've got a racer like that on its own. We've got these guys on the side here. And this particular racer is it's transparent. You can see the background through it. So normally storyboard artists, when they draw very quickly, because it's not something that needs to be absolutely perfect. In fact, sometimes it's nice when it's stylized like this. And so they need to fill in inside. They can color, they can go into the color paint over here, and they can paint inside like that. But it's not necessarily going to be that pretty all the time, and it may take a long time. So instead, they can use a technique called matting. Adding a matte to my drawing, and that I can do manually. I can go into my brush, for example, and I can use, maybe let's take a gray color, and I'm going to use a thing called draw behind. And draw behind, what it does is when I draw on top of something like this and I release, it's going to actually slot it behind. Boop. You see that? That's really cool. And now it's filling it in, for me very quickly, like that. But still, it's a bit rough, and still it takes me a bit of time to do it. So what I can do is do it automatically, right? So I'm going to right-click on the layer, and I'm going to say, generate an automat. The radius is fine. I think the color is fine. I'm going to create a matte on a new layer. not on the same layer, but I could also select, the same, and okay, and that's it. It's done. Not only it's done, but it's also created a new layer for me, so I can still modify it if I want to. In fact, I would like to add more shading to the mat itself, not the lines. So I'm going to use another tool, which is very practical, which is called the stencil brush. And the stencil brush allows me maybe to paint an overlay brush mode like this. And that will give me access to some very cool tools. I can do this, for example, and you'll see that it's going to stick inside my drawing. You see, so if I do this, it's going to just stick to inside my drawing. It's not going to go over outside my drawing. And that can be, again, very practical to create whatever I want. There's another one called repaint brush mode. If I want to repaint the black, let's say I want that to be red, right? So just by the phi over here, I need to be on the right layer, obviously, and I can just do that, and you'll see it's going to repaint just the lines for me. You see that? So look, there are many tools like this that will really make your life very easy when creating a storyboard. And it's Storyboard Pro has got a bunch of these things. Okay, so let me carry on then and move on to a little bit more of the storyboarding itself in terms of how we tell the story. I'm going to bring in a bunch of scenes here. Let me just change to the color again because I always forget. Okay, I'm going to bring a bunch of scenes here. Okay, so before, what I did is I created my panels myself by adding more scenes or more panels. This time I've saved a bunch of scenes and panels in the library, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop them directly inside my thumbnail view over here, and that will allow me to add all of those. But it's going to say to me, well, in terms of the name, what do you want to call them? Because the name is different. So I'm going to say, well, this is scene, you see, we've got 1, 2, this is scene 3. So I'm going to call this scene 3. And I'm going to also renumber all the scenes after that automatically. Okay, so I'm going to say, okay. And now you'll see that, here we go. Look at that. I've got scene 3. And after scene 3, I've got, well, scene 3 is quite long, actually. It's got 14 panels. And then I've got scene 4. And then I've got scene 5. You see, so I've got quite a few here. Now, if I want to reorder anything or reorganize, I can go to my overview workspace, which is at the top here, and I go to overview, and now I'll be able to see all of my panels and scenes together. And now I can move them around if I want to. I can combine them. For example, if I want to combine 1 and 2, I just drag it across and make sure it's linked like that. Then I can rename it as number 1 because now it starts from 2, and then it goes to 3. I can rename all of them subsequently like that. So I can select all of these things and I can go and rename the board if I wanted to. Rename scene. What am I going to call it? I'm going to call it number 1, for example, and then I want to renumber everything else after that automatically. Boom. That's it. 1, 2, and 3. So you see, it's that easy to be able to reorganize or see all of your storyboard in one go. Another way also to see the storyboards very nicely is to use either the horizontal or the vertical workspaces. And that is, for example, if I use the vertical one, I can see my board, my panel, and I can see captions underneath for my storyboard, my script or my action notes or anything that you may want to add. Maybe this can be very useful for teachers to teach story to your students or storyboarding, where they are drawing something and then the teachers leave a note, for example. And if you've got a script, you can directly drag and drop the relevant script inside of your captions here. For example, this is the dialogue for this panel, for example. I can just drag and drop that portion inside of my panel. And this is another dialogue over here from the announcer. For this one, I'll bring it to this one. Or I can just type. So the teacher can type a note for the student for this one, or you guys can put yourselves some notes there as well. So as you can see, it's very complete. There's really quite, there's a lot of things that you can do to tell your story and to convey the story as far as you want to. Now, let's go back to the thumbnail view for a second. And I want to talk about what we call an animatic, okay? Animatic is, because you've got layers. Let me go to this scene at the end here. Because you've got layers in your panel, you are in Storyboard Pro able to create movement for these layers. And that is easily done on the timeline. So if I go to the timeline view, you'll notice that automatically Storyboard has created a timeline for me as I was creating these scenes and panels. You guys saw how easy it was for me to add more scenes and more panels. And as I was doing that, it was actually laying down all of that onto a timeline for me. So now I can go in and change the timing if I want to. Let's say I want the first one to be much longer. I can select it and make it longer like this, and everything else will move. If you don't want everything else to move, that's also fine. You can activate the animatic mode and create yourself a gap in between the two and put something else there if you want to, or nothing. So now when you play this, when you start the playback of this, it's going to play and show all of the different panels one after the next, like this. So it becomes a video representation of your storyboard. So as you can see in this last panel, we've got movement on one of these, on two of these layers. So we've got these two ships or vehicles going towards the cliff, like that, okay? So that's because they are on separate layers. Let's see how we can do this for our third little vehicle. So we're going to animate it, okay? So I'm going to select the layer. I'm going to choose my transform tool. I'm going to make sure I'm at the beginning of my panel there. I'm going to go into the tool property window, and I'm going to add myself a keyframe. Okay, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with that. I'm going to move it to there, let's say out of screen. Let me make this a little bit bigger. We can see there. And then I'm going to go at the end of my panel and add another keyframe there. Or I can simply move this. And maybe I want to make it a bit smaller as it goes away, because it's like moving away from the camera type thing, right? And that's it. That's all it is, guys. So now it's created a movement between there and there. If you want to add another keyframe in the middle, that's fine. You add a keyframe there, and then you can actually move it. And it creates a curve. You see, like that. So if you want to avoid that, that other car, we can now actually play this and see what it looks like. That's it. Now, if you want to create some slow in or ease in or ease out, or make it slow it down at the end or something like that, that's also possible. You can click on this button here, and it opens up the function curves so that you can add the ease in or ease out wherever you want to. So on the path here, maybe I want to do, something that will sort of like go fast and then increasingly slow like that. So at the end, it will kind of slow down as it's going. Okay, so it's slowing down, accelerating, and then accelerating some more at the end. So there's really quite a lot of things that I can do here in terms of animating. I can transform, I can rotate, I can change position. Obviously, I can create a path, but I can also animate the camera. So we've got a camera by default, but at the moment the camera is not moving. So if I select the camera tool here, see the camera is not moving. In fact, let me reframe this a bit, and I'm going to frame it up like that, okay? And I would like to zoom in a little bit on the cliff. So that's easy. I can just go, and I've got the camera tool selected. I'm going to create a keyframe at the beginning of my panel and another one at the end of my panel. And at the end, I'm just going to zoom in like this. And maybe I'm going to reframe it a bit higher again, like that, the rule of thirds. By the way, I'm sure you guys all know the rule of thirds. If you want to make it work for you, you can add in these grids and work with the grids to make sure that you can see what the rule of thirds are for yourself there. So, okay, so now that's it. There's the animation, the zoom in for that camera. Okay, so if I go back to the beginning of this frame and I play it, the camera is moving towards with the vehicles there. I mean, it's a very simple movement, but you'll see a little bit later that you can make very complex movements as well. But that's how easy it is for you to create quick animations for your storyboard. So let me show you what I mean by you can go a little bit more complex. This scene that I'm going to bring in now is the entire scene for this particular storyboard. And you'll see there's a whole lot of things that you can do here. You can, you can bring in videos, you can add in, like I said, animations, you can add in sounds, you can put in some effects, and because Storyboard Pro has, if you look at this scene here, it's got a camera move, but you can see that the movement is pretty good in terms of, let me just zoom in like this and hide everything around. We're just going to look at the camera, okay? So let's play that again. You can see that it's working really well in terms of the movements. There is some kind of parallax in there. If you guys don't know what parallax is if some objects are closer to you than others, they will move, or they will appear to be moving faster than the ones that are away. And there's also angles and things like that. Now, here, it works perfectly because actually Storyboard Pro has a full 3D environment. So I can go around the entire environment in 3D, and I can push away these layers away from the camera. And when I move the camera, then it will be able to show me the parallax properly, because these objects at the back here will move slower than the ones in the foreground. And these ones will appear bigger than these ones, for example. And also, I can actually select the camera and move it in full 3D if I want to. I can tilt the camera like that. I can tilt it in all three directions if I want to. And that is great when I really want to now bring in a full 3D environment inside of Storyboard Pro, which I can do. So I'm going to show you this over here, which is a scene of them racing inside the jungle in 3D. And this is, You can bring in 3D files inside of Storyboard Pro, such as FBX, OBJ, or Alembic also, and that will allow you to have different layers. For example, here, the different layers for the different ships, like this, as well as a background, as well as a camera. If I go out to the stage view, you'll see it's a complete 3D environment. And my camera is actually, over there looking at my objects. If I look at the next 3D scene over here, you'll see in the camera view that this one is following this object on the vine. And that object is something that we have animated directly inside of Storyboard Pro. Okay, so if I select the object here and I activate it, you'll see that there is a path on there that this object follows. You see there's the path that it follows. And I can change at any point where this is going to be. I can rotate it at any point like that. I can rotate it like this if I want to. So you are absolutely able to bring in 3D objects inside of Storyboard Pro, and you are able to animate it the same way as you would animate a flat 2D image as well. So that you'll be able to combine the two together, and of course animate the camera like we are in here to enable you to move and in full 3D. Okay. While I'm doing all this, there's also a few things that I can talk to you about in terms of videos, for example. Well, Storyboard Pro not only allows you to bring 3D and images, but also videos. Over here, I've got a video here. Let me just show you, which is the background. Okay, so if I turn it off, you'll see that my guys here are running away from a monster, right? They're running away from a monster like that, but there's no background. So what we've done is we've actually created a moving background as a video file. And all you needed to do really is go into your browser somewhere. Oops, sorry. Let me just start my browser there and my demo files, and I'll show you what I mean by that. And all you need to do is look at the clips that you've got, the videos that you have that you want to use. So for example, here's a set of videos, and you can just drag and drop them directly into the scene. And once you've dropped them in there, you can move them around and animate them, access them however you want. So for example, if I turn this back on, you'll see now that my video is underneath, behind my moving characters. So again, if I play it, you can see the video is moving like that. And I can select this video, and I can add more layers to this video even if I want to. I can draw more layers on top of the video and act it as a separate track altogether inside of my storyboard, my animatic. So videos you can bring in 3D, and you can also bring in sound. So for the sound, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually switch off my headphones. And I hope that you guys can still hear me. And I'm going to now play some of these things here, because as you can see on my timeline, I've got a whole bunch of soundtracks here. If I lower down over there, there's a whole lot of soundtracks, right? I can have as many sound tracks as I want to, and I can bring in as much sound as I want to. For example, let's play a little bit of this. So I'm going to just do here and let you hear what's going on here, okay?
Nice. What's this? No Nash Calloway? Looks like they've awakened the Daxamori's beast. What a murder!
You see, so there's a lot happening here. There's an announcer, there are sound effects, there are dialogues, there's a whole bunch of things. You guys can bring in WAV files, MP3 files, you know, you name it. You bring it in there, and then you can also edit them. You can go and maybe change the fade in and fade out, right? So you can go and put yourself a keyframe here, put yourself a keyframe there, another one there, another one here, and then you can fade this sound in and this sound out if you want to, right? You can also change the volume of multiple ones if it's too loud or not loud enough. And you can even put some effects now on these sounds. So for example, here, when this guy is coming out of the cave, his sound is a bit flat. Okay, so it goes something like this.
Calloway?
All right, he's coming out of a cave, right? So maybe we want to give him a little bit more of a reverb on his sound. And that is done through the effect stack over here. And in here, you'll be able to add as many sound effects as we've got here. So balance, delay, high pass, low pass, pitch, reverb. So we're going to add a reverb, which is already here actually. So let's listen to it on its own by sampling it here. Okay, that's without the reverb. And then we're going to add the reverb to it. And you can change the options here and make it exactly how you want it. And now let's listen to it. You see, so it sounds like he's coming out of a cave. That's it. And now if we play it, it should look a lot better.
Nash Calloway?
Okay, so that's, you know, that's very easy to add some sound effects already for me. And for example, there's a couple of other things such as the ability to accelerate something. So for example, here, this lady is saying this. Let me just.
Nash, what did you do?
All right, and that could be great, but it could also be a bit slow. All right, I would like her to speak a bit faster than that. But I don't want to change her pitch. I don't want her to sound like she's swallowed some helium or something. And I also don't have time to cut all of these things myself. So I'm going to go and change the speed and duration of the panel. And I'm going to say I would like it to be 150%. So it brings it down to 1 second. But I wanted to preserve the audio pitch. So I don't want her to sound like she's inhaled helium, like I said. And I'm going to say, okay. And as you can see now, it's reduced the speed, but it's going to reduce the time and increased her delivery.
Nash, what did you do?
And it's kept her pitch.
Nash, what did you do?
That's it. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of very, very nice things that you can do sound-wise, video-wise. You know, you can create it from scratch. You can add 3D as well in terms of objects or environments or camera move. As you can see, you know, it can create then a very complete storyboard as well as an animatic. So let me move back to my headphones quickly, and then I'm going to talk about what you can do with this once you are done with your storyboard. Okay, and then I'm going to go into your questions. So let me just, there we go. Oh, okay, no, that's not what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to do. Okay, so from here, what happens from here? Once you've done with your storyboard, once you are, once you have completed it and now you would like to show it to the world or to your teachers or to your teammates, what can you do? Well, you can export it in many ways. You can export it as obviously a bitmap, an image as a layout, or just an image. You can export it as a PDF because, of course, you may want to look at it as a printed version or a digital PDF version, right? And that you can even customize that exactly how you want it. What panels to show, what captions to show. If you want to put your own logo up there or the logo of the school, you can absolutely do that. Let me show you what it looks like when a storyboard, when an export is done. This is the PDF version of this particular one. Okay, so you can see it's got the scene name, the duration, the dialogue already there. Obviously, it shows you the picture. You can even see the camera moves. You see there's a camera move there. It's in over here and out over there. You can see the 3D if you've got the 3D over there as well, and the camera moves inside the 3D. In Storyboard Pro, you can also create yourself some effects, like a blur, for example, and even that is visible over here inside of your storyboard. Let's say this, they're moving so fast that it looks like a blur. You can see that directly into the PDF version as well. So all of these settings can be set by you and saved, and then you can reuse the same settings every time. So you can print this or share this amongst your team members. Then you can also, because you've created yourself a video, you can of course export to a movie. All right, and there are many options again for the movie, different type of resolutions and settings. You can separate, you can render your scenes separately as different movies, and you can also add time code. You can add even the captions themselves. For example, just like a subtitle on Netflix, for example, where you have the subtitles for each character when they're talking. You've added those captions yourself in there, and you can make them visible into the video as well if you wanted to, and change the font and the size and all of that. You can also export, you can export as an FBX, which is a 3D format. So for example, you've created a camera move, or you've created some animation in here of that vehicle on the vine, and you want to play around with that or see that again in After Effects or in Maya or in Blender. You can export it directly from here. And then finally, you can export it as a harmony file as well, which is the Toon Boom, the Toon Boom animation production tool, which I will talk about next week. So I will talk about this again when we start with Harmony next week. But essentially, you can create Harmony scenes directly from here, from Storyboard Pro, and have the animatic and the camera moves and the sound already all in the Harmony scene. Okay. So there's a lot that you can do. The last thing I want to talk about maybe is the project management, because that also can be very practical, especially for teaching. So for example, let's imagine that you have a professor who has prepared a story for everybody with a script, and you can maybe create a master storyboard just with the empty panels at the beginning, but with the story in there, nothing else, just creating the different scenes and panels, the structure of your big storyboard. And then you could split it into different scenes and send all of those different scenes and parts to different students, for example. You can imagine this as being a collaborative work among students as well. It doesn't have to be a school scenario, but then all the students are busy doing a portion of that storyboard, So you can split it directly from here. You can extract directly from here, but then you can then merge it back into the big master storyboard. You can merge and replace things that have been changed, or only modify the panels that have been changed. So you can do your management of your project directly from Storyboard Pro as well, instead of copying and pasting certain bits from one scene to the other, or exporting or using the library. So yeah, that is Storyboard Pro in a nutshell. There are a couple of questions. So let's go into the questions here. Everyone, hi, so oh, okay, those are not questions, comments. So if you guys have any questions, you can turn on your mic or type something in the chat box. Please let me know. No questions?
Yeah, no
Don't
questions.
be shy. It's so good.
Yeah, so far so good. But still need to like practice a lot first.
Of course, yes, of course. Thank you, Calvin. No, of course. Look, I mean, you need to practice. Can I also bring your attention to one last thing? On our on the web, we've got a section here called the Learning Portal. So you go to learn.toonboom.com, learn.toonboom.com, and in there you have a lot of different exercises for both Storyboard Pro and Toon Boom Harmony. So for example, you can go down here and you go, I want to learn about storyboarding or Storyboard Pro, and you click there and you'll see all the courses that are available for Storyboard Pro. Everything from how to create a project to how to build an animatic, right? But you can also, if you don't know what to look for, maybe you can go to what we call journeys. And these journeys are, let's say, for example, the one journey is, I want to become a storyboard artist. So you click on that and it takes you to the different courses that will show you what you need to become an effective storyboard artist in Storyboard Pro. So the Kickstart, the Foundation, advanced storyboarding, and advanced animatics, for example. So, it's very, very accessible. You can go into one of these, for example, and you have the exercises. It will tell you how long, more or less, it's going to take you. So if I go into the, let's say, for example, drawing and color over there, there are 24 little topics there. You can download the material, which is free. You can use the 21-day trial version as well. And you can go, let's say, for example, to drawing with a pencil tool, and it will show you either image by image, step by step, or some of them also have a video. So let's see if I can, there we go. That one has got a video, you see? So you can play the video and it will tell you what to do, and you use the material that was provided for you, and you can go it through like that. So this is really a great tool. I'm gonna type it in here so that you guys can copy and paste it, learn.toonboom.com. Okay. Have a look at that. Download the free trial. You've got 21 days, and then you start playing with that. But of course, for the teachers, it would be great to go through the training, which I'm sure Sylvain will talk to you about, so that you can become certified trainers of Toon Boom, and then you'll be able to teach this very, very confidently. And that's it for me. So unless you guys have any other questions, maybe we can wrap it up, and I will send you the video as soon as it's ready so that you can review the session at your own ease or spread it to other students or teachers. And then we can, you can review the video whenever you'd like. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's great.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys. That was easy for me. No questions. So thank you very much for being here. I hope it was useful. And I will see you again next week for Toon Boom Harmony, which is the animation software. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, we do.
Thanks, Marilyn. Thank you, Calvin. Thanks, everybody else. Have a good day.
Thank you for teaching.
Pleasure. Have a good evening, everyone.
Very
We'll
good.
see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. See you next week.